You wake up one morning with a sore throat. You barely notice it. You go about your day. You drink some water. You swallow a few times, and by tomorrow it's gone. It is nothing. But 66 million years ago, that exact same sore throat killed the most feared predator to ever walk the earth. Not a meteor, not a rival hunter's jaws, a sore throat. This is the story of the worst death a Tyrannosaurus Rex ever experienced, and it did not happen in battle. Think about how you picture death for an animal like this. Claws, teeth, blood in the dirt, a final roar before collapse. That is the version every documentary sells you because it is satisfying. It confirms what you already believe about power. The strongest thing in the room only falls to something almost as strong. Anything smaller does not count. Anything invisible does not count at all. But the fossil record was never interested in what is satisfying. Picture the animal first. 12 meters long, 13,000 pounds of muscle wrapped around a skull built like a battering ram. Bite force strong enough to crack bone into powder. For decades, paleontologists imagined the Tyrannosaurus dying the way it lived. Violently, gloriously, teeth first. That is the story we want to believe. It fits the myth. But fossils do not care about myths, they only record what actually happened. In 1990, a fossil hunter named Sue Hendrickson spotted a few vertebrae poking out of a cliffside in South Dakota. What she found became the most complete Tyrannosaurus skeleton ever unearthed. Paleontologist Peter Larson led the excavation, and the world nicknamed the specimen Sue after its discoverer. 90% of the skeleton survived, intact, patient, waiting 66 million years to explain something modern medicine still deals with today. Museums fought over Sue. Legal battles dragged on for years before the skeleton finally landed at the Field Museum in Chicago, sold at auction for over $8 million. People lined up to see the bones. Almost none of them came for the pathology. They came for the size, the teeth, the sheer spectacle of standing beneath something built to kill. Nobody buys a ticket to look at a parasite. And yet the parasite is the reason this particular skeleton has anything left to teach you at all. At first, scientists assumed Sue lived hard and died hard. There were healed fractures, a damaged fibula, scarred ribs, evidence of a life spent fighting, hunting, surviving. That part of the myth held up. Sue was a survivor. But then researchers looked closer at the skull, and what they found changed everything. Smooth-edged holes, perfectly circular, punched clean through the lower jawbone on both sides, almost symmetrical. For years, nobody could explain them. Some guessed infection, some guessed injury from another predator's teeth. Neither theory quite fit the shape. In 2009, veterinary pathologist Ewan Wolfe proposed something no one expected. He compared the lesions in Sue's jaw and in several other Tyrannosaurus specimens to a modern disease found in birds and raptors. It is called trichomoniasis. It is caused by a microscopic parasite, one so small it needs a microscope to see. And it still infects pigeons, hawks, and falcons today. Here is what it does. The parasite enters through the mouth. It spreads across the soft tissue of the throat. Slowly, it eats away at that tissue, forming lesions that grow larger over time, cutting deeper into bone. In modern birds, infected individuals develop a condition nicknamed canker. Their throats swell, eating becomes difficult. Eventually, in severe cases, the airway closes. Falconers know this disease well. It passes between birds of prey, through shared kills, through pecking, through the simple act of feeding on the same carcass. A hawk can look completely healthy 1 week and be unable to swallow the next. There is no dramatic moment, no visible struggle from a distance, just a slow tightening, a mouth that used to work perfectly starting to fail at the one job it has. Now imagine that in an animal built entirely around its mouth, a Tyrannosaurus Rex had no arms strong enough to grab prey, no claws built for the kill. Everything, every ounce of survival depended on that jaw. Hunting depended on it. Feeding depended on it. Defending territory depended on it. And this parasite went straight for the one body part the animal could not survive without. Would you notice if the thing keeping you alive was also the thing quietly failing? Unlike a modern hawk, a Tyrannosaurus had nowhere else to turn. A hawk with a failing throat can still perch, still rest, still wait out a mild infection while its body fights back. A 9,000-pound predator cannot simply wait. It needs enormous quantities of food constantly just to keep that much muscle running. Every day the jaw worked a little less efficiently was a day closer to starvation layered on top of infection. Two slow deaths, running side by side. Wolf's research suggested that Sue may have suffered from this infection for an extended period before death. Not days, possibly weeks or longer. The lesions show signs of ongoing active damage, not a single traumatic event. This was not a fight. This was not a fall. This was decay, patient and invisible, spreading through the one organ a predator this size could not live without. Picture it, the largest terrestrial predator of its era, unable to properly close its mouth, unable to fully grip flesh, its bite, once capable of crushing bone, growing weaker by the week as infection ate into the tissue around its teeth. An animal engineered by 65 million years of evolution to be untouchable, brought down by something too small to see. Sue was not alone. Researcher Bruce Rothschild, who has spent decades studying disease in dinosaur bones, has documented other Tyrannosaurus specimens with similar jaw lesions, along with evidence of gout, stress fractures, and arthritis. These were not invincible monsters. They were animals, bodies that broke down the same way bodies have always broken down, whether the animal weighs 9 pounds or 9,000. Here's the part that should sit with you a little longer. Trichomoniasis still exists. Right now in your city, there is likely a pigeon or a hawk carrying the same family of parasite that may have ended the reign of history's most famous predator. Nothing about this disease disappeared, it simply moved on to smaller wings. You probably do not think about parasites often. Most people don't. They are invisible, so they feel unimportant. But invisibility has never meant harmlessness. It just means you cannot see the thing that is winning. Think about how much of your own health operates the same way. Blood pressure climbing with no symptoms, cells dividing quietly, wrongly, for years before anything shows up on a scan. You are not so different from a 66-million-year-old predator in this one specific way. The threats that actually reach you rarely announce themselves. The roar, the visible danger, the thing you can brace against that was never the real killer. Not for Sue. Statistically, probably not for you either. There's another specimen worth mentioning here. A Tyrannosaurus known as Stan, discovered in the same region of South Dakota, shows a puncture wound in the back of its skull, a hole roughly matching the width of another Tyrannosaurus tooth. For a while, this fed the myth we wanted. Tyrannosaurus killed by Tyrannosaurus. Violence, answering violence. And it is possible that happened, to Stan or to others like him. But the bone around Stan's wound had already begun to heal. Whatever caused it did not kill him outright. He lived with it. He carried it. The same way Sue carried her infection quietly for longer than any of us would have guessed. That healing matters more than it seems. Bone only remodels around an injury if the animal survives long enough for the body to respond. Stan's skull tells you he walked away from whatever put that hole there. Maybe for weeks, maybe for years. The dramatic ending, if there ever was one, is not written in that wound. It happened somewhere else, sometime later, in a moment the fossil never recorded. That is the frustrating and honest truth about almost every dinosaur death scientists have ever studied. Bones are good at recording survival. They are far worse at recording the final moment. What killed Stan in the end is still unknown. What likely killed Sue is not a moment at all, but a slow erosion, which is exactly why her case stands out. It is one of the only Tyrannosaurus deaths where the evidence points toward a process instead of an event, so the myth needs correcting. Tyrannosaurus Rex, the animal culture turned into a symbol of raw, unstoppable power, likely did not die the way movies show it. Not mid-roar, not locked in combat with a rival. The most complete skeleton we have ever found suggests something far slower, far quieter. An infection working through soft tissue day after day in an animal too large and too specialized to compensate for a wound in the one place it could not afford to be wounded. Why does this matter to you sitting here generations removed from anything that could be mistaken for a Tyrannosaurus? Because the pattern has not changed. Evolution built you the same way it built Sue. Extraordinary at a few specific things and quietly vulnerable in exactly the places you rely on most. You do not have a bite force built to shatter bone. But you have systems, immune, cardiovascular, neurological, that you never think about until something small starts working against them. Trichomoniasis is not extinct. Neither is the underlying lesson, something that could never hunt you down. Something with no claws, no speed, no size, can still be the thing that ends the story. Not because it is stronger, because it is patient, and because you were not built to notice it until it had already done its damage. Paleontologists like Peter Larson, Ewan Wolfe, and Bruce Rothschild did not set out to humanize the most feared predator in Earth's history. They set out to answer a smaller question: what happened to this one skeleton? But the answer they found reframed the entire animal. Not indestructible, not immune to the small things, just very good at hiding weakness until the fossil record finally gave it away. So the next time you feel a small ache and brush it off, remember Sue. 90 feet of complete predator, brought low, not by an asteroid, not by a rival's jaws, but by something you could not see even if it was sitting right in front of you.
You woke up this morning with a sore throat. You barely noticed it. History's greatest predator did the same thing.